Do you ever find yourself apologizing for just being you? Do you ever feel sorry for merely existing? Have you ever felt like your whole existence is an inconvenience to others? And you find yourself questioning the validity of your emotions because you've been made to believe that you are inconsequential, that you do not matter as much as other people. That is the psychology of self-hate. A young man in his early 20s was always apologizing for breathing too loudly. Not as a joke, an actual apology, with hand over his mouth. When asked why he apologized the way he did, he looked confused, as if the answer was obvious. "I didn't want to bother anyone," he said. This person had learned to treat their own existence as an inconvenience. And that's how self-hate begins. It doesn't announce itself. It simply becomes the water you swim in, until you forget what dry land even feels like. If you're listening right now, feeling that familiar recognition, I want you to know something. You're not broken. What you're experiencing is a survival strategy that outlived its usefulness. You learn to shrink yourself for a reason. Maybe to stay small and safe. Maybe to earn love through suffering. Maybe because someone convinced you that your worth was conditional, and you've been trying to meet those conditions ever since. And now, you hate yourself for the very same reason. This video will show you 3 things. 1, where your self-hate actually comes from, and why it's not your fault, though it is your responsibility now. 2, why fighting it directly makes it stronger. 3, how to dismantle it without becoming someone else, because you were never the problem. You were simply misled by voices that were never yours. Imagine you're born into a theater. The stage is already set. The script was written before you arrived. And everyone hands you a role. Be this, not that. Good children don't cry. Smart people don't struggle. Successful people don't need help. And you, being small and wanting to belong, you learn your lines. You rehearse them until they become part of you. Until you can't remember a time when you weren't playing this character. And here's what happens. The audience leaves eventually. The play ends. The directors and scriptwriters go away. But you're still up there, performing for nobody. So that voice that says, "You're not enough," it's not your voice. It's the director you internalized when you were too young to know you had a choice. The French philosopher Montaigne wrote, "We are all patchwork, shapeless and diverse. Each bit, each moment plays its own game." But self-hate doesn't let you be patchwork. It demands consistency. It demands perfection. It demands that you be the role, perfectly, forever. And that's the problem. This consistency of perfection is impossible to attain, and even harder to maintain. And because you can't maintain perfection, you despise the part of you that keeps showing how human you are. When a child is given a mirror, at first they delight in it. They make faces, they laugh, they see themselves, and it's enough. But then, slowly, if someone stands behind them, pointing, "Your nose is wrong, your smile is crooked, why can't you be more like this or that?" Eventually, the child stops seeing their reflection. They start seeing the catalog of flaws. The mirror becomes a weapon, and the child doesn't notice. So they carry the mirror everywhere, reminding themselves always that they are not whole. The mirror keeps reminding them of what is lacking, and not what is beautifully present within them. Self-hate is what happens when you mistake the pointing finger for the truth. Charles Cooley's looking glass theory explains how self-image becomes distorted when we confuse other people's perceptions with reality. So here's the first truth. Your self-hate was trying to protect you. The logic is, if you criticize yourself first, maybe no one else will get the chance. If you stay small, maybe you'll stay safe. Freud called this the superego, the internalized voice of authority. shaped by parental rules, societal expectations, cultural do's and don'ts, and moral standards. Its job is to police, judge, criticize, and push you toward perfection, even at the cost of your peace. But here's the problem. The superego doesn't know when to stop. It keeps attacking, it keeps pushing, forgetting that you're no longer the child who needed to earn love through compliance. Most people try to fight this voice. They argue with it. No, I am good enough. No, I am perfect. But Carl Jung said, what you resist persists. Fighting the voice gives it power. It confirms the battle. So the way out is not fighting, but recognizing. When you hear that voice, instead of combat, ask, who taught me to speak to myself this way? Not as blame, but as archaeology. Because once you see the history, the voice loses its authority. It becomes an echo. Here's the cruelest trick. Self-hate disguises itself as virtue. I'm just pushing myself to be better. I have high standards. But there's a difference between growth and punishment. Growth says, I'm learning. Punishment says, I'm failing. Erich Fromm, in his book, The Act of Loving, wrote, the task is not to feel secure, but to tolerate insecurity. But self-hate tolerates nothing. It demands certainty, perfection, proof. So ask yourself, when you push yourself, are you moving towards something you love or away from something you fear? Because one is inspiration and the other is terror. Ask yourself, how do you react to yourself in moments of imperfection? How gentle or how harsh is your judgment? When you fall short of social standards or personal standards, do you treat yourself with love, even when your flaws are obvious? Or do you cast aspersions on yourself? Maybe the real question is, whose voice are you hearing? When you judge yourself, is it truly your own, or just an echo from the past? Because self-hate is rarely born from failure. It's born from inheritance. Inherited standards, inherited fears, inherited expectations you never agreed to, but learned to obey. When those voices get loud, they blur the line between growth and punishment, discipline and cruelty, accountability and self-erasure. So pause. Listen closely. What if your imperfections aren't evidence of inadequacy, but evidence of your humanity? What if each flaw is not a verdict, but a doorway, a place where compassion can enter? You don't become stronger by tightening the grip on yourself. You become stronger by learning to hold yourself differently, not with indulgence, not with denial, but with honesty and mercy, the two forces that actually make growth possible. Because the truth is simple. You cannot hate yourself into becoming someone you will love. These are 3 practical steps to subdue self-hate and start appreciating your humanity. 1. Every morning for 10 minutes, sit with yourself. Not to meditate, not to fix anything, just to witness. Ask yourself these 5 questions. 1. What am I carrying today that isn't mine? This exposes borrowed burdens. 2. What small win would make today feel meaningful? Self-hate only sees failures. This redirects attention to attainable progress. 3. What is one thing I can be gentle with myself about today? This shifts the mind from harshness to compassion. 4. How can I make today 1% easier for myself? Tiny acts of self-care accumulate into self-respect. 5. If nothing else goes right today, what is one thing I will still be proud of trying? Effort counts, even before results appear. Let these questions work on you. If you practice daily, your self-perception will slowly shift. You'll see yourself differently, and you'll treat yourself differently too. 2. Voice separation practice. Break the illusion that every harsh thought is your authentic voice. Label the voice. Trace it to its origin. So when you hear words like, You're ugly. You don't deserve love. Ask yourself, whose voice is that? An ex? A parent? Label it with its origin. Name the source. When you label the voice, you recognize who is speaking behind the thought, and you break free from its grip. 3. The night practice. At night, instead of cataloging failures, ask, what did I do today that was kind? To others and to yourself. Small things count. You made someone smile genuinely. You did something small that eased your stress away. You didn't give up. This rewires your brain to notice what's working, not only what's broken. These practices are small acts of rebellion. Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. And honesty is the most radical thing you can do. What happens when you begin this work? At first, nothing seems to change. You practice, and the voice keeps talking. You think, this won't work for me. But that thought, that's the voice. That's the pattern trying to keep its grip. But if you keep going, something shifts. Not like a light switch, more like dawn. Gradual. One day you notice you had a critical thought and didn't spiral. Someone compliments you, and you say thank you, because you believe you are worthy of the compliment. Small things that are actually everything. You start to see the machine. You start to predict its moves. And there's power in that. It's like watching a magic trick after someone reveals how it works. It still happens, but it doesn't fool you anymore. You also realize how harsh you are on yourself compared to how you treat others. Someone else makes a mistake, you're understanding. You make the same mistake, you're brutal. You have one standard for humanity and another for yourself. Don't mistake self-alienation for accountability. This is where it goes deeper. Soon you will realize the way you treat yourself is the way someone once treated you. Not everyone, but someone significant. They taught you weren't good enough. It wasn't your fault then. You were powerless. But now, it's your responsibility to interrupt the pattern, to stop passing on the violence. Because as long as you treat yourself the way they treated you, they remain in control. Eleanor Roosevelt puts it this way: no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So as long as you obey that voice, you will never face the freedom of deciding who you are. So ask yourself, if you weren't trying to be who you were told to be, who would you be? What would you do differently? How would you spend your time? It may feel impossible to answer, because the performance has been going on for so long. But that's exactly why we must ask it. Jung called this individuation, becoming who you truly are. Facing what you've avoided, acknowledging what you've denied. Not to become perfect, but whole. Imagine yourself at the end of your life looking back. Would you regret not being perfect? Or regret spending your whole life chasing perfection instead of living? No one on their deathbed wishes they'd been more self-critical. People regret the risks they didn't take, the love they withheld, the life they didn't live. Research shows self-compassion, not self-criticism, creates real growth. Why? Because compassion makes risk safe, mistakes survivable, effort meaningful. Self-compassion isn't weakness, it's courage. It takes courage to be gentle in a world that demands hardness. You learn to hate yourself because you were taught love was conditional, that worth had to be earned. But it doesn't. You were never broken. You were handed a mirror by people who couldn't face their own reflection, and you mistook their reflection for your identity. The criticizing voice is not wisdom. It's an old recording in an empty room. This is the mantra: I am not the voice, I am the listener. And today, I choose to listen differently. You don't have to fight the voice. You simply have to stop believing it. Carl Jung said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And what you can become right now is someone who treats themselves with the same mercy you offer others. Someone who knows being human means being imperfect, and that imperfection is sacred. If this resonated with you, leave a comment, not with perfection, but with honesty. What part of your self-hate story are you ready to put down? And if you want more of these conversations, subscribe. Let's walk this journey together.